Woman, an in-depth exploration of the world of women today with Samantha Dean.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about the black woman in today's society. Our guests are Dorothy Pitman Hughes, who is one of the founders of the community-controlled daycare centers movement. She's now involved in developing an alternative to welfare and forced work programs. Also with us is Julia van Metre. She's a nurse, a vocalist, and a student of psychology. Dorothy, do you find that to be black and to be a woman is sometimes laboring under a double handicap, that of racism and sexism?
Yes, that's absolutely true. I was almost afraid that you were going to ask me the question that was answered by Shirley Chisholm, saying that she finds it more of a problem to be a black woman in government than a woman, or whichever way she felt it. Certainly black women are on the bottom of both racism and sexism, and that is a problem, but it's a problem for the liberation of all people. And if we don't end the problem for liberation for any people, we won't end it for black women, but we can't do it without ending it for all people.
Mm-hmm. Julia, which have you found to be the worst of these two problems, racism or sexism?
Well, I'll have to say racism first, because that's what I was first introduced to, racism. You know, I grew up in Georgia, and you know how it is there,
Mm-hmm.
and everywhere else like that. But I think racism is the worst.
Do you find, as lawyer Florence Kennedy says, that you're basically fighting the same enemy, that it is namely, and I quote, the white supremacist male in both cases?
I don't know about Julia, but I don't. I think that white women have a long way to go. I understand that we have a problem that's much of the same because we both deal with sexism, but most times black women have to deal with white women's racism and classism. And we have to, I think that we have to talk about racism, classism, and sexism. Because one of the things I think that white women have understood is racism. At least it's understood. We don't all know what to do about it. But classism, it's almost like the whole movement is saying, hey, let me hold on to a little of something that I have. You know, I'm getting rid of the sexism part, and I'm dealing with the racism, but, you know, okay, I need my classism.
Right.
So doing an analysis, I think that we have a lot to deal with. For once, though, the doors are open for us to deal with it. We are able to talk to each other, but I don't believe that sisterhood can happen until it's understood that classism has to go out with sexism.
Well, regarding these three situations, where do you feel the most progress has been accomplished to date?
Well, for me, I've progressed in all of them because I think I am an individual, I know. And I've freed myself from all of this, you know. I've dealt with racism, and I've dealt with being a woman, and, you know, that sort of thing, and freed myself from that. And also with classism. Dorothy, you remember the last one, right? I'm a nurse, and for some reason, you know, the director of nurses was out to get me, really. She was a white, good-looking woman.
And how did this manifest itself?
How did it happen?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what was on her mind, you know, but really I was where I was supposed to be at that time. But she banned me from the hospital and took my case away.
On what grounds?
Well, I didn't know what her grounds were until we had a meeting, until I called the Human Rights Commissioner, who she thought was the Human Rights Commissioner, but happened to be my sister, Dorothy. Oh. And we had a meeting with the director and the administrator. It ended, it was really, she had no grounds. Just, she thought that she, you know, she was the director of nurses after all, you know, and I'm a mere black nurse.
But presumably you both won and you got your job back, right?
Yes. I got a letter of apology from her and a letter to my registry that she banned me in error. And I got paid for the 3 days that I was off. and I got my case back.
I think that was a big case of
Classism.
what could be called classism, because
Right.
both Julia and this person have very outstanding personalities. And I think that it had something to do with her being Southern and unable to change, the white woman. She had accepted being in New York and being around a number of different kinds of people, but she hadn't accepted the possibility of someone in what she considered a lesser position dealing with her as an equal.
Right.
And I think that when she realized that Julia's attitude is that paper qualifications is not doesn't bother her,
Right.
but it doesn't stop her if a directorship, if someone else has a directorship, she has her responsibility to her job and herself, and she dealt with it on that level. And it turned out to be, it could have been both classism and racism, but I think it was more classism that she couldn't relate to that.
It was all three, maybe.
Right.
Yes.
Well, considering that black women are probably one of the most oppressed segments of society and therefore very active in their struggle for liberation, why are many black women not particularly enthusiastic about the women's liberation movement? It seems a parody.
Well, it isn't true anyway, because the women's movement started with black women. As a matter of fact, as long as I can remember, I've been having rap sessions. Sitting on all of us, we have to remember our parents and other people, other women sitting on the porch in the South, right, in the evening, talking. And what were they talking about? They were talking about their problems and how were they dealing with the sexism that was in their black homes, right? And there were black men in those homes. So many times you would pick up things like black men are copying the attitudes of white men. And although the sophistication might not have been there, that we understood that manhood was supposed to be the white male elite, and only the white male elite.
That's what society said.
Right.
This is what they were taught.
So that, we got a basic understanding of where we were at, and we have a very good background for that, being in the South and being in those rap sessions. And when the movement progressed, women were in SNCC and CORE and all of the organizations, the human rights movements that was called the civil rights movements. Women found themselves unable to sit in the group with men and develop political strategy. And like, as the sister said, who wants to cook grits for the revolution? We realized that men were saying, in the bedroom, what do you think of this? But when you get in the group with other men, it's that upfront thing, and you're not supposed to talk. And the women started dealing with that attitude of men. And then, because there were white women involved in that movement too, white women began to see their inferior position, and that they had been put on a pedestal, and the pedestal is a prison for white women.
Right.
And they were the first chatter. Every group that has been brought into this country has been brought in on the basis of white women's imprisonment by white men, and given the titles of those white women, So that, I think that once we realized that, and mostly once white women realized that they were not free, that the movement took place because there was more free time. And also, white women have not been attacked by Moynihan, as black people have been attacked by Moynihan.
It started really, as far as I can remember, with Harriet Tubman. That was a long time ago.
But there are certain factions of the black community who are rather anti the women's movement, aren't there? I'm just
but those are
wondering
mostly
where they feel at variance.
Okay,
with the
those are
women's
mostly in my travels around speaking at universities, I always get the black woman who's educated in a white environment, who somewhat being in that environment have to believe Moynihan, or is imposed on enough to believe. And I get the questions, don't you think that we should be spending our time in the black movement rather than the women's movement. Now, how can you separate that? I mean, if we're moving for liberation, we have to be moving for liberation of a total person. I mean, you can't liberate half a race. You can't liberate half a people. And we are a nation of people.
And you feel that a closer identification with the women's movement might prove divisive to your own struggle for complete liberation?
No, I don't. I think that a lot of women are programmed into believing that. But I believe that the kitchen is no better than any other place. That if it's not good enough for my husband, it's not good enough for me. I can't contribute anything that that isn't good. You know, if I can't move myself out, I can't ever hope to move my husband out. Like, one of the things that black men have to get over, and black women need to get over it so that they can help black men to get over it, is the attitude or the idea that men are supposed to be the total wage earners in the family, are supposed to take care of the total family. Otherwise, they're not men. There isn't a white man in this country who takes care of his total family that hasn't had the money handed down to him and worked for by my people or someone else, you see. So, and white women work. 53% of the women in America are working, you see. And it certainly isn't black women who have those jobs. So, that if black men get away from that, and that their manhood doesn't depend on the subjugation of anyone else, black women will feel less threatened, because we have a lot to be threatened about. I mean, you know, because black men sometimes see themselves dealing with the freedom that they visualize of the white woman, and the black woman may get threatened by, oh wow, he digs freedom, so he's going over there, right? So we have a lot of things to cope with, and we have
yes,
to.
But how, I want to ask her, how can you measure how many women are not in the movement? Do you have to be in the organization? Can't you do it at home? I did. I started a long time ago, before there was a women's lib.
Of course, well, that's where the consciousness
right.
raising
Because
starts,
really, you know, the organization is just getting together and saying what you've done, and maybe I can learn something from you. I think that because everybody have to find their own way, and their own way of being liberated.
How do you feel about the Equal Rights Amendment? If this were to be ratified, do you think it would help you as black women, or go against you?
I don't need, you mean that bill?
Yes.
That thing, that,
yes.
that piece of paper?
Right.
I don't need that. Nobody needs it, because as I said before, you free yourself. You liberate yourself, you know. I think the movement and like I said, the getting together is like people going to church together, you know, but you have to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's understandable that it's needed. It should happen, you know, because a lot of people are unable to see themselves moving for their own freedom. And I think that we need to express all of those, bring into play all of those things that will support women and freeing themselves. And I think that it should happen, that
well,
it just should be recognized by the country that it's needed, and that women are so left out, and it's needed for them to gain some kind of strength and consciousness.
But we have a Bill of Rights too. What good is it doing?
Yeah.
We had Confederate money. It's no good anymore. That's a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm. In other words, you can't legislate against what's in people's hearts.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can't legislate what is the norm of people. I mean, I feel that at this time that the whole of America is becoming absolutely, if you look at the pattern and of what's happening now, and look at and read about what happened in Hitler's Germany, right? I mean, it's not so far off. We as a nation have lost a lot of what could be humanity. And I think that if you look at laws and consider the two basic laws of nature, the human law, then we don't really need the paper. And you know, you can't even believe anyway that someone who wrote the Constitution could ever dream of having met you or I or Julia. I mean, it just wasn't possible. So how could this guy or this group of men understand what our needs would be? So how does a nation, how is a nation expected to relate to that? I mean, we could only relate to it as a piece of history and develop strategies for the kinds of change that we need now.
Mm-hmm. See your point. Let's talk about the black family again. There is a myth, or perhaps it's not a myth, I'd like you to tell me, that the black family is a matriarchal family. Is it so or not?
I don't think that it's a myth, and I think that within that there are lots of myths. I think that considering what the situation was for black men, that would have to be expected.
Right.
That
It was operant conditioning.
if black women were, if people were going to survive, if black people were going to survive, you're right,
Right.
that we would have to, that whoever, by any means necessary, you pull yourself out of that situation. And even though it's used today to sort of say to black men, and this is again what I'm talking about Moynihan, right? To say to black men, hey, look, you better put her in the kitchen, you better put her back and shut her up, it's time for you to come out and speak
Right.
now. You know, and what we have to get across to men and women, black men and women especially, is that if black women's strength have brought us out of all this way, you know,
Brought
to
us in
where
the
we
world
could, where we
first.
could, where we can relate to each other, where we can
Right,
see each
right.
other, and really begin to understand each other. We've come this far. Then nobody should ever suggest, and no black man on earth should ever believe, that we couldn't go together to total freedom. And it doesn't mean someone walking behind the other person, but walking together toward that
Well, the
freedom.
black woman's place has never really been considered to be in the home, has it? Did you find that there's less sexual stereotyping in
The
a
black woman has always first been in the home.
Right.
Every black woman who's ever gone out to work has always carried with her the worries of her children, of her husband, whether or not he's going to be feeling well, did he get a job today, whatever it was, how are my children faring now? And so we really never left home. And also when we've gotten back home from working, we've done our own houses.
Right.
We've
But
cooked our
We've
own
been
food.
in the
you know.
home and out of the home,
Right,
too.
yes. But whereas a black woman might be doing it as part of her family responsibility for economic necessity, a white woman might consider that this is a step towards her liberation.
As I think, like, whatever you need to liberate yourself, you see. If you feel that, say you feel that you've been kept in the home, and to liberate yourself you have to get out to work, then you do that. You know, whatever you need to do. You know, you were at home, you know, your place is in the home, and mine was on the job and in the home.
I never
You see-
really knew that white women were saying that. I have a feeling that they were saying that they wanted the freedom to have a choice about whether they were going to be in the home, because white
Absolutely,
women
right.
never were in the homes. Black women have been in white women's homes.
Right.
And all of that work has been done according to, I mean, with an exploitation of that sister who's been in the home, right? Where the husband never offered enough money to pay for what that black sister was doing. Where I think that if white women had been in the home with that black sister, they would have both recognized
They
the
would have been
common
sisters
bonds
a long
between
time
them,
ago.
you know,
Right.
and more of a movement would have happened quicker.
Right.
As far as employment is concerned, where do you feel you're most at variance, or perhaps in competition with white women? Is it the white middle-class women?
I don't feel in competition with white women.
I'm talking really about, you know, as far as a pay discrepancy
Oh,
is
you mean
concerned.
pay? It still isn't competition because nobody has set us up for that yet. I think that white women obviously make more money
They
than,
get jobs
than black
quicker,
women, but
faster.
it's not really based on. It's based on the whole of the system, how it works. White men are making more money than black men. You know, white women in some jobs are making more money than black men. In most jobs, black men are making more money than white women, and white women are making more money than black women. So black women are always on the bottom of that whole thing. And I think that one of the things that could happen if the movement, women's movement, take a position on how they relate to women, period, non-white women, and also how they're going to relate to all of the out groups. That includes non-white men. And those men who see that movement as their movement too, to liberate themselves. So that what we're leaving out is how we all are going to deal with the white male elite, you know. And if white women see themselves going into jobs where they are going to be trained by a black woman or a black man who has been doing that job for 15 years, and if they take a salary above that person who's training them, then they really aren't dealing with the movement. And they really aren't dealing with breaking down that system of exploitation.
It's been happening.
So that, and it's happening.
Right.
And we're talking about not substituting white women in our oppression, or not substituting black men in our oppression, but everybody understanding what we're doing to each other, because we are the system. And it's only going to change as we change ourselves.
I had a job with an encyclopedia company. I think I got 5 promotions in less than a year. I became a district manager. Can we call names? No?
I think better not.
No. They know who they are. But anyway, I was, you know, to me, if I'm going to have a job, I have to like it. Then it's not a job. And I don't want to stay in the same place, at the same level. If there's room, you know, there are other places to go. So my next goal was regional manager. There was no black regional manager, man or woman, in the area. And they gave me so many hurdles. You know, you have to do this, and you do that. Then there's something else, you know. So when I found out what their game was, I quit. But there is a black regional manager now, and I helped her because I knew what she had to do. So I helped her. She's the black regional manager now. She lives in New York, but right now she's in California for the company. Mm-hmm. And I think they're paying her something like $125 a day. They're paying her that to go to California. I helped her because I didn't let her find out like I did, as long as she has it, you know. I'm sort of quiet, but I'm deep.
And from there you went into show business, is that right?
Well, we've been in show business a long time.
How do you find the situation in show business?
Now, me?
Right now, yes.
Well, right, I think really it's sort of crooked. I do it because I like it. I'm not trying to make a career of it or anything. We just love to sing, all of us, you know.
When I started and came to New York, I thought it was horrible, and I had to get out of it in order to learn the politics, because, and especially for any female, it was horrible. I mean, the kinds of moral trips you would have to take yourself through to get anywhere.
It's the whole thing.
This is for anything.
With everything.
This is for anything.
It's with everything. Classism, racism, and
you have to get to a point
sexism.
where you do what you enjoy, and you don't. And also, it helps you to understand that you have talents that you came here with, and that you can build on all of them, and you don't have to be hooked into one skill because of an educational system that doesn't understand education.
How do you feel about representation of black women in the media?
Oh,
It's nil.
That's really one.
Almost.
Gloria Steinem and I worked together for a couple of years, speaking around the country. And one of the reasons that you don't see a lot of black women, you know, and as Julia said, I mean, it's not new. And one of the reasons is because the media is terribly racist.
Right.
You actually see
you
more
know,
black
you
men
just don't
than
see
you do
these
black
people.
women in the media.
Yes, of course
She
you do,
just said
because-
that the black woman is on the
Right, and black men are not getting the kind of things that they should be getting, obviously. I mean, like, you would never see, I mean, 5 years ago you might not have seen a black man in studio work like this.
on the camera.
Right, and today you do see one, okay? You may in 5 years see a woman if we keep pushing.
And
right?
she'll be a white
and
woman
that will have to
first.
be a white woman first, so that the patterns are there. And all right, nobody is too upset about nobody's too upset about it, which frightens me also. I mean, I think that black men have to be concerned about it. Because
They might be upset about it, but you don't know.
They don't
You know,
show it
that's
to
the
that
media
extent,
again.
right.
Okay,
You know,
well,
it's never
we
known.
have to become upset enough to begin controlling some of the media. That's what I'm talking about. We have to find a way to deal with the media.
Where people are oppressed over a long period of time, their self-image is very often damaged. Do you find that the black female self-image has been more damaged perhaps than the male?
I have never seen anything happen to the black female's image.
Me
I have seen always a beautiful black woman. I mean, strong. I mean, if you talk about black woman, I think of the earth when I think of black woman. When I think of myself, I think of the earth because I know it. I have lived in it. And the fields that have been plowed and the cotton that's been picked, that's been my mother. My whole life has been built on earth. And I think that there's nothing that can shake that. I mean, there's nothing ever that will tremble black womanhood.
Well, that's great. It's tremendous.
And if we find one getting a little shaky, we prop her up.
And we have to do that for all women, so.
The black woman has sometimes been accused of robbing the black man of his identity.
She didn't
Now,
do it.
wait a minute. Now, let's okay. That's a good one.
What do they mean by that anyway? How do
I
they rob?
understand what is meant.
I know what
think
they mean, but
that
I
black
know what
men
I
have
think they
also fallen into some of that understanding. You know, that we are robbing them of their manhood. And a quote from Bobby Seale, you know, manhood is never dependent on the subjugation of anyone.
Right.
And certainly it should not ever depend on the subjugation of a black woman. You know, and I think as he talked about, everybody sweeps the floor, everybody, you know, takes care of the baby, and everybody makes revolutionary policy because our lives are, right?
One very quick question, we've got 30 seconds left. How do you assess your progress? By the distance you've come or the distance you've yet to go?
I assess my progress by the changes that I see in individuals because I believe that my life, what I came here to do was to rap and to be with and to communicate, and I don't care to do very much else except that. I don't know.
Mine's about even.
Dorothy and Julia, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
We'll be back again next week. Good night from Woman.